Paul Pogba entered the 2018-19 season having just won the World Cup with France. Unlike many other stars who played deep into the World Cup, there was no extended vacation for him, and he was in Manchester United's starting 11 as their captain for their first Premier League match against Leicester City. Then United manager Jose Mourinho deployed Pogba as a deep midfielder. Pogba's primary job in this position is not to score goals, but rather progress the ball from the defensive half of the pitch to the attacking half, and create chances for his teammates. Against Leicester, Pogba controlled the midfield for 84 minutes and was removed with United holding a 2-0 lead and seemingly having the game in hand. As soon as Pogba left, the match swung completely in favor of Leicester. This change in play emphasized how crucial Pogba was to United, but after the game, the story would become about Pogba's obnoxiously slow penalty run-up, which would unfortunately become a habit over the first half of the season. At the end of September, Jose Mourinho publicly stripped the vice-captaincy away from Pogba after the midfielder publicly suggested that United should play more attacking football. Pogba may have had a point, but publicly criticizing your manager is never the way to go about things. A rift had formed between the two that would never be repaired. A week later, reports broke out that United were going to sack Mourinho following their match against Newcastle. United were 2-0 down inside 20 minutes, and it certainly looked like this would be Mourinho's final day in charge. At halftime, he dropped Pogba back into a makeshift back three. From this even deeper primary position, Pogba put on a masterful performance to facilitate a United comeback, which likely saved Mourinho's job. This would be the story of Pogba's season under Mourinho. The Frenchman would perform on the pitch, but with Mourinho never settling on a first 11, the constant player and formation shifts led to inconsistent results and poor performances. Given the rift between the manager and his star player, Pogba became an easy scapegoat. Tension between the two would only rise until Mourinho was sacked in mid-December. Pogba reacted to this news by posting his now famous and highly controversial Caption This Instagram post. He also reportedly led a dressing room party celebrating his win over Mourinho. These two highly unprofessional acts didn't help Pogba's public perception, and some pundits began suggesting that Pogba had down tools to get Mourinho fired. As usual, simple punditry quickly became popular narrative. But was it true? Did Pogba actually down tools? While Mourinho was in charge, Pogba consistently performed at a high level, and United undoubtedly performed better when he was on the pitch than when he wasn't, their goals per game number being inflated by a 4-goal performance against last-place Fulham. The notion of Pogba down-tooling came about when Mourinho called Pogba a virus following a 2-2 draw against Southampton, a match where Pogba turned the ball over an astonishing 12 times, plus unsuccessfully attempting to dribble by an opponent another 4 times. Pogba reportedly responded to Mourinho by telling him that there was no one for him to pass to, as his system doesn't allow players to move freely. Did he have a point? Against Southampton, Mourinho sent out a 3-man midfield of Pogba playing slightly ahead of Marouane Fellaini and Ander Herrera, in front of a back three of Phil Jones, Scott McTominay, and Nemanja Matic. He deployed a whopping 5 central midfielders that day. Everything was out of whack. And with United going 2-0 down inside 20 minutes, Pogba had to drop deeper to stabilize the midfield. Ahead of the midfield, United's forwards had a particularly bad day. Romelu Lukaku and Marcus Rashford combined to only receive 56% of passes intended for them. On the occasion Lukaku did receive a pass successfully, he promptly turned the ball over another 6 times, totaling 15% of his touches. The rest of Pogba's numbers were in line or better than his season averages, and he easily outperformed both his midfield counterparts on the day. Pogba was dropped for the subsequent match, a 2-2 draw against Arsenal. He came on for the final 15 minutes, playing at the top of a fluid midfield diamond, but didn't play long enough to have a big impact. Pogba was dropped again that weekend as United ran riot over last-place Fulham. With progress to the knockout rounds of the Champions League already secured, Pogba would return to the starting 11 against Valencia in what was a heavily rotated side, with the other 10 players having made just 43 Premier League starts between them that season. United played exactly as poorly as you'd expect a team with Pereira, Fellaini, Phil Jones, and an out-of-form Romelu Lukaku to play. After an hour, United had only created 1 chance at goal, which of course came from Pogba. It was only after Marcus Rashford came on and Pogba had another quality player to play with that the game shifted in United's favor. Prior to the match, Mourinho issued a challenge to Pogba saying he wanted to see him impact the game in order to regain his place for the weekend's match against Liverpool. By all accounts, Pogba did. He put out what was by far his best statistical game of the season, with most of his numbers well above his season average. You can only do so much when you're let down by your teammates playing poorly, but that's not how Mourinho saw it, and Pogba didn't play against Liverpool. When Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came in, he moved Pogba to the number 10 role, giving him less defensive responsibilities and the freedom to move around the pitch. It especially gave him the freedom to do what he does best, get in the box and score goals. With the shackles off, Pogba ran rampant over the Premier League and United followed suit. The good times would come to an end. Injuries to Anthony Martial and Jesse Lingard against PSG significantly diminished United's attack and press, reducing the space Pogba had to operate. Against Liverpool, injuries to Nemanja Matic, Juan Mata, and Ander Herrera forced Pogba to withdraw from his advanced role and play much deeper. Knowing what was required of him, Pogba put in a defensive shift against Liverpool, but the increase in defensive responsibilities took away from his offensive output. In fact, the stretch between Martial and Lingard's injuries through the March international break was Pogba's worst of the season. Two things happened during that international break. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was given the manager position full-time, and Pogba began being linked with a move to Real Madrid. That speculation was never going to sit well with United supporters. The cries that he was checked out only grew louder. Of course, the numbers tell a different story. By now, teams had figured out if you cut off Paul Pogba, you cut off Manchester United's attack. When Pogba played further up the pitch, United's midfield would struggle to progress the ball into the attacking third. Countering this required Solskjaer to drop Pogba into a more defensive role, but when he'd get the ball, he was then reduced to playing long balls and hoping a hobbled Marcus Rashford could make something happen. We already know that Solskjaer's system required much more running than his predecessors, and that the increase in running led to injuries and burnout throughout the squad. Yet since Solskjaer took over, Pogba had played all but 198 minutes, far more than any other outfield player. In all likelihood, Pogba was exhausted. Despite all that, over the last 8 games of the season, Pogba still managed to bring his numbers back up above what they had been prior to the international break. He just didn't get any help from his teammates. When playing as the number 10, Pogba's job was to score and create goals, which he did, but he only played in that role for a small part of the season. The rest of the season, his job was to facilitate, leaving his production numbers at the mercy of his teammates' finishing abilities. He may have been less enthusiastic at times and brought unnecessary attention to himself at some parts of the season, but it would be wrong to say Pogba downed his tools to get Mourinho fired, especially when his last game under Mourinho was his best, or to say he quit at the end of the season when he battled exhaustion and still increased his numbers, all while having more defensive responsibilities. Please don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe.